I'm Laura Ingraham, and this is the Ingraham Angle from Washington tonight. A devastating earthquake rocking Anchorage, Alaska, causing major damage, destroying buildings and roads. A live report in just moments. Plus, is Bob Mueller using perjury traps to force his targets to flip? Alan Dershowitz says a resounding yes, and he's here to explain a lot more. Also, my warning to President Trump ahead of these high-stakes meeting tomorrow with China's President Xi. Stay tuned for that. Plus, caught on camera, star and NFL running back Kareem Hunt shoving and kicking a woman while she's on the ground in an Ohio hotel. We'll bring you the shocking video. And an anti-Trump sitcom takes it a step too far. And a burglar is on the run without his pants. All that and more in Friday Follies with Raymond Arroyo. But first tonight, massive development or mass hysteria. When Michael Cohen pled guilty to lying to Congress yesterday, you would have thought the conversation might kind of center on what that development meant for Cohen, you know, the one who actually admitted to lying. But instead, as is their track record, pundits and Democrats made a Herculean leap to the president, suggesting some wild things in the process.
He's got a good case for collusion. I mean, if this were a mafia investigation, Trump would be indicted under RICO. No question about it.
He got healthy on his congressional false statement charges by coming clean today. He's a much more dangerous witness.
The president is right to be nervous right now because it appears that time is running out. It's become very clear that the Trump campaign colluded with the Russians in trying to subvert the election.
But is that necessarily the case? Last night we spoke to someone who might know a thing or two about this, such as former Whitewater Deputy Independent Counsel Saul Weisenberg, who, as fans of the show know, is as honest as they come. Watch.
All Cohen said is that I lied to Congress. He didn't say that President Trump helped me lie. So there could be all kinds of things that Mueller is keeping quiet from us that we don't know about, that Cohen has told him. That's possible. But that's the realm of speculation. Let's talk about reality. And reality is this is a nothing burger.
Here to make sense of it all, Alan Dershowitz, Professor Emeritus at Harvard Law School and author of the book, The Case Against Impeaching Trump. Alan, is Trump shaking in his boots over all this, or is Saul right, a big nothing burger?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both. Look, the president should be concerned because he's not going to get an objective, neutral, nuanced report from Mueller. Mueller is going to try to create a narrative that takes all of these perjury and lying charges and tries to weave them into something against the president. But I think this all shows the extraordinary weakness of the Mueller investigation. If you look at everything he's come up with, the vast majority of crimes are things that happened after he became special counsel, not before. He was appointed to uncover crimes that had already occurred. Instead, he helped foment crimes by creating these perjury traps, having people fall into them, and then trying to flip them as witnesses. Now, you don't have to believe me on that. Listen to Judge Ellis. Judge Ellis, who was presiding over the Manafort case, said that what Mueller is doing looks like he's trying to make these people not only sing, but perhaps under certain circumstances, even compose. And it doesn't show a strong prosecution case when everybody who's been indicted virtually is either indicted for lying or indicted for unrelated financial activities that have nothing to do with the president. At the moment, it's hard to know where's the beef. Where is the actual substantive crimes that relate directly to the relationship between the campaign and Russia? And also, we have to always remind ourselves, collusion is not a crime. It is not a crime to use material stolen from Assange. It is not a crime to build a tower in Moscow.
Right, I was just going to get to that. I mean, it was hilarious to me to watch some of the chyrons blaring across the lower third of screens on the other cables last night. You might as well have thought that Donald Trump was caught on tape in Moscow, like high-fiving Putin and saying, good, thanks for giving us all those votes and, you know, name your state. But the way they were describing
even that wouldn't be a crime. Even that wouldn't be a crime. You have to find something in the statute books.
Yeah. So Alan,
there are political sins, but the difference between a sin and a crime is the difference between a democracy and tyranny.
Well, and this has been the case from the beginning. We've had all these little tidbits of information that have trickled out, all these so-called bombshells, Alan, and one after the other have kind of faded away or been completely disproven. And Byron York wrote an interesting piece today. I want to quote from it. It's titled, "Remember Prague." In Michael Cohen plea deal, Mueller says nothing about key collusion allegation. The plea shows that Mueller closely scrutinized everything Cohen told Congress. So if Mueller had evidence that Cohen's definitive denial of the Prague story in the same document was false, it seems reasonable to conclude that Mueller would have charged Cohen for it. Yet in the charges against Cohen, Mueller said absolutely nothing about Prague. Remember the Prague meeting? That was supposed to be another nail in the coffin of Donald Trump and showing real collusion. No mention. Nothing.
But it's so important to understand that you have to look first to the statute books. And you can't look to these vague, broad statutes like obstruction of justice or conspiracy. You have to find specific mens rea, actus rea, criminal results. And it seems to me the Mueller fans, in their haste to try to find anything on Trump, are forgetting basic core civil liberties. And that is the ex post facto clause of the Constitution, the due process clause require that you find a specific criminal act that's already prohibited by the statute, and then you have to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt.
Right, so that goes back to the special counsel. It should never have been started. Yeah, it should never have been
That's right.
Kicked off in the first place. It was a mistake from the beginning. The way the letter was written from Rosenstein authorizing it all the way through to today, you called this from the very beginning. Others did as well. And I think it's once again, it's like a test case in why we have real constitutional concerns about these prosecutors who have very little supervision over what their ultimate.
And then the next issue is Mueller going to try to produce his report and have it made public before the president's team has an opportunity to review it, respond to it, and issue their report simultaneously. Basic fairness, our adversary system, all requires that there can't be a presumption that anything a prosecutor says, whether in an indictment or a report, is to be presumed true. That would undercut the presumption of innocence. You have to have the two reports issued simultaneously. Let the American public judge whether or not the report rebutted and answered really establishes crimes, impeachable offenses, or any of the other things that Mueller may be looking for. And I have a high level of suspicion that in the end we're going to see a lot of indictments for perjury and lying, a lot of indictments for financial fraud against other people, but we're not going to ultimately see any crimes directed against the President of the United States. Look, that could change, but at the moment it doesn't appear that way.
Yeah, we'll see what else they might have in their quiver. Professor, I want to get your thoughts on another huge story that we spent a lot of time on this week. You were on radio earlier this week. I devoted an entire segment, almost two segments, to this issue of anti-Semitism rising in the United States. We've seen anti-Semitic acts rising, increasing in Europe as well. But one of the first Muslim American women elected to Congress this month, of course, is now defending this fired CNN commentator, Mark Lamont Hill, despite his viciously anti-Israel comments in a speech he gave at the United Nations. Congresswoman-elect Rashida Tlaib, a Democrat from Michigan, tweeted the following quote: "Calling out the oppressive policies in Israel, advocating for Palestinians to be respected and for Israelis and Palestinians alike to have peace and freedom is not anti-Semitic. CNN, we all have a right to speak up about injustice any and everywhere." Was that what Mark Lamont Hill was doing?
No, of course not. He was calling for violence against Jewish civilians in Israel. He was saying, don't follow Gandhi, don't follow Martin Luther King. He was praising terrorism against Jewish civilians. And there is now an international definition of anti-Semitism, and Hill fits right within it. You know, I've debated him on CNN, and he is a bigot, and he is an anti-Semite, and he never should have been on any network show. He shouldn't be teaching at a major university. He is virulently anti-American, anti-Semitic, anti-Israel, and anti-Western values in general. He's just a terrible, terrible human being.
Now,
and
Temple is
we
standing by
shouldn't be glorifying views of that.
Temple University
and people
is
who
standing
stand
by him,
him,
Professor. Yeah, they're standing by him.
Well,
and then we got first Muslim American woman in Congress standing by him.
Well, and you know, universities have academic freedom. On the other hand, when you have members of Congress standing by him, standing by Farrakhan, some of the same people stand by Farrakhan. In fact, Hill stood by Farrakhan, and we have many members today of the Black Caucus who have stood by Farrakhan. Farrakhan is one of the biggest disseminators of anti-Semitism in the country today.
And why do they keep doing it?
And you get, you know, CNN. Well, because they get away with it, because the focus is on only right-wing anti-Semitism, which is condemned universally. When you have the shooting in Pittsburgh, everybody condemns it. But when you get anti-Semitism coming from the hard left, like Hill and some of these other people, people don't condemn it. They praise it. They stand up for it. Can you imagine a professor making a comparably anti-black or anti-gay statement? No university would stand by them. So there's an absolute double standard of tolerance for anti-Semitism, anti-Americanism, anti-Christianity, anti-Western values. It's a double standard, and it's unacceptable.
Thank you, Professor. It's great to have you on tonight. And now to some exclusive tape of an interview that Corey Lewandowski and Dave Bossie conducted with the president inside the Oval Office. The issue of former President Obama's knowledge of intelligence operations against the Trump campaign was raised. Listen.
Do you think, looking back, Barack Obama knew what Clapper and Brennan and those guys were doing, their insurance policy, to come after the campaign, to spy on American citizens, or do you think he was completely aloof and had no idea?
Well,
what happened to the end of that soundbite? I guess you guys will have to tell me. Joining me now, that was, okay, we'll try to get that rack back up for you. Joining me now, 2 minutes conducting the interview. Okay, assuming we don't get the tape, full tape. You know it's live TV when we do this, right? That's why it's fun. It's all live. It's like radio.
It is fun.
When something goes down on radio, I'm like, whoa, what can you do? Okay, so what did he say? What was the response?
He said, yes, he thinks, in his opinion, Barack Obama knew about the spying and knew about that activity, which shocked us.
Yeah, he hadn't said that before.
No. And having, being two guys who've never conducted an interview, Laura, sitting in the Oval Office, interviewing the President of the United States for our book was incredibly a huge honor for us.
Yeah, and Trump's Enemy is already a huge bestseller. So you sat with him, but you've known the president, and you know him very well, both of you. I know, because I know how much he respects both of you and how much he genuinely likes and appreciates everything you've done, both for the country and now your second big best-selling book. This question, though, of Mueller, what Alan Dershowitz just raised, really dovetails into a lot of what you wrote in your book, because they're obsessing about this Moscow deal that never happened, that's totally legal to discuss, okay? And then, as Peter Schweitzer said, shouldn't we be discussing the Trump, if we're discussing the Trump Tower deal, which never happened, why shouldn't we be discussing the Biden family's consummated $1.5 billion deal with the PRC, the Chinese government, while he was Veep, and the Clintons taking Russian speaking fees and foundation donations when Hillary was Secretary of State? It's, if they're not discussing that, it's just politics.
Laura, this is politics at its worst. Donald Trump was an international businessman who had business all over the world, Canada, all over the place. And he didn't know if he was going to get elected president, so he was out looking at additional opportunities, as every business person would. And when he won the presidency, all the way and by the wayside. But look, we know Michael Bloomberg's going to run. Does this mean that the day Michael Bloomberg announces he has to give up all of his business interests, any individual who's a business man or woman before they run for office has to give up all of those things in case they potentially win? This is politics at its absolute worst. There was no crime, and the only crime that Michael Cohen committed was lying, which he did on his own, and he's very good at that.
That was his decision to do. We actually have the audio of what President Trump
this is so important.
Said to you. I want everyone to listen to this. Roll it.
Well, what difference does it make? Do I think? Personally, I think you do. Let me put it this way. If the shoe were on the other foot and the same thing ever happened to him with other people doing it, it would be treason and they'd be locked up for 100 years.
The double standards and the way the press has covered this. I mean, the unmasking of the identities of American citizens. Susan Rice's involvement. Why does Susan Rice always get off the hook, too? I mean, that woman is like...
Two sets of rules, Laura. It's two sets of rules. One for Donald Trump and his people, one for Hillary Clinton and her people. If you look at Peter Strzok as a perfect example, he's the FBI agent that interviewed Michael Flynn and said... you know,
said he didn't lie.
That he lied. That he gets convicted.
Yeah.
He actually pleads to lying.
Yeah.
On the other hand, under Hillary Clinton, he gives immunity, right, to Cheryl Mills and Abedin and Samuelson, and that case goes nowhere. The double standard is there. The two sets of rules are just disgusting, and we should be all sick of it.
But Trump's enemies now inside the administration. Now, I would make an argument that maybe calling a few people who are inside the administration, who are good, you know, they're nice people, they just have a different worldview than the president does. And an issue I'm going to get into later, but this issue of trade. What the president has done with China has been courageous, frankly heroic, when you think about what China is poised to do to us and the rest of the world over the next, you know, they look long-term, 50, 100 years. Gone. The U.S. supremacy gone. There's a lot of pressure on him right now. He has this big meeting tomorrow with Xi to back off on these tariffs and open this new dialogue up with China. Who is pushing that inside the White House?
Look, I think there's two very separate camps of the trade agenda inside the White House. There's the Navarro-Lighthizer camp, so Peter Navarro and Bob Lighthizer. And then there's Stephen Mnuchin and Larry Kudlow. And then to a lesser degree, I think Wilbur Ross weighs in on each side of those issues depending on what it is. But what we have to remember is Donald Trump makes the decision. Because in this book, remember what we heard. Bob Woodward told us, Gary Cohn literally was taking documents off the Resolute desk because he didn't want Donald Trump to sign a better trade deal with South Korea at the time. It was against Gary Cohn's, you know, globalist. He didn't get the nickname Globalist Gary for nothing. Okay, he got that name because he was probably profiteering it somewhere. Goldman Sachs was profiteering off of it, and so he didn't want Donald Trump to sign the papers. So they were literally taking him off his desk. That is such a disservice. Those are the enemies.
But we were talking about this in the green room. Ronald Reagan would never relent on this kind of trade deal with and I'm going to say that I know it's presumptuous. I did work for Reagan, but in my view, he would never relent. They have China where they want China right now. They have them right where they want them. You release that grip on China, they're golden. That Wall Street's happy. They're like, woo, all that money we put over there, all the M&A work China's going to do, all the private banking, all the IPOs. There's a lot of money being made for the billionaires. For the little people, they're going to always suffer at the hands of China.
China's economy's on the ropes. This president has done that all by himself against all odds. He needs to stand tall in the breach right now.
He knows it.
He must defend the policies that he's put in place, and because they are going to turn out better for the American taxpayer and for the American worker in the long run.
His political instincts.
The best.
I mean, you and I mean, we're around for Reagan. I have not seen political instincts, just raw political instincts better pretty much. I mean, I disagreed on our lifetime,
no question. If he holds fast on China, the EU knows they're next, and they better play a fair game or it's over.
Don't listen to Mnuchin. I like him as a person. But don't listen. You got to listen to your gut, Mr. President. I love the book. I'm so glad to see you last night at your party,
thank you for coming.
Everyone go out and buy the book. It's featured also on my Facebook page and LauraIngraham.com. And now to the devastation in Alaska after a huge magnitude 7.0 earthquake rocked the state. Fox's Dan Springer has the latest details for us tonight. Dan.
Yeah, hey, Laura, this was a major earthquake with widespread damage, but incredibly at this point, it appears there has been no loss of life. The powerful magnitude 7 earthquake hit at 8:30 this morning in Alaska. It was centered just 10 miles north of Anchorage. Roads crumbled, buildings shook, water mains cracked, natural gas lines broke, leading to some fires. A tsunami warning was issued but later canceled. The Ted Stevens Airport was closed for a time. It has reopened. The 800-mile Trans-Alaska oil pipeline has been reopened. It was down for 7 hours as a precaution. The video is dramatic. This was the scene on the 6th floor of the courthouse in downtown Anchorage as clerks ducked for cover. Amazingly, I spoke with one hospital. They were expecting a flood of patients, but there were few, and the injuries were minor. There is a report of a man who suffered a serious injury at a fire at his house. The most significant damage appears to be done to roads, bridges, and homes. Some of the repairs will take months until after the ground thaws. As many as 40,000 people are without power, and that's serious considering the temperatures are in the 20s. Earlier today, the mayor of Anchorage described the minute-long earthquake and the citizens' response.
It was big. It was loud.
and it had the sound of something that was going to last for a long time.
There have been dozens of aftershocks, a couple strong ones. Nerves are definitely rattled, but given the power of this earthquake, it looks like Anchorage has come through about as good as they can expect. Laura?
Dan, thanks so much. And our thoughts and prayers are with all of Alaska tonight. Coming up, Trump at the G20, a live report, plus my warning, you heard a little preview of it, to President Trump ahead of these high-stakes meetings with China's President Xi. Stay there.
We'll be meeting with China, as you know, yes. We'll be meeting tomorrow, and we've already spoken, and we're working very hard. If we could make a deal, that'd be good.
The problem with the president is, as usual, he thinks that he can get his way by trying to bully close U.S. allies into submission.
And when he has those real conversations with them, he tends to soften because reality starts to set in. And it's not just him yelling at a wall or yelling at his staff. It's real life.
And I am saying that if you're going to fight this battle, you're going to lose it. Who's going to lose it? Trump will lose NAFTA. He will not be able to change NAFTA overnight.
Oh, I love watching those old montages. All of those experts, well, they all PhDs in economics, but most of the PhDs were wrong anyway. President Trump did get rid of NAFTA and today signed the brand new trade deal called the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Agreement, or USMCA. And that's not all. Just this July, he took on the European Union threatening tariffs. The EU, in turn, agreed to lower industrial tariffs and import more U.S. soybeans. Then, in September, he clinched a long-sought revamping of a trade pact with South Korea, increasing the number of cars U.S. automakers can sell there, plus a phase-out of tariffs on U.S. trucks, among other things. That was huge and very underreported. Now, if those were appetizers, tomorrow night might be the main course. The president engaging in high-stakes meetings with Chinese President Xi amid a growing trade battle. Fox News chief White House correspondent John Roberts is with the president in Argentina tonight, tangoing all the way there. John, what can we expect to see from this meeting?
Good morning to you from Buenos Aires, Laura. Well, it's difficult to overplay just how much is at stake when President Trump sits down with President Xi a little less than 24 hours from now for that dinner meeting. U.S. officials say they are profoundly disappointed with China's intransigence about releveling the playing field on trade between the United States and China. They do say that there was some reason to be hopeful, but it's also possible that nothing could happen tomorrow. So who will be in the meeting? The U.S. delegation consists of President Trump, the Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, Secretary of the Treasury Steve Mnuchin, John Bolton, the National Security Advisor, Jared Kushner, Larry Kudlow, Robert Lighthizer, the U.S. Trade Representative, and Peter Navarro, who is the President's Trade Counselor. The inclusion of Navarro, very interesting. China's not particularly fond of him because he's kind of, I guess you could say, the Luca Brasi of the White House Economic Group, a real enforcer. And you put him together with Robert Lighthizer, you got a powerful 1-2 punch of China hawks. In the middle of all of this is Larry Kudlow. He's definitely a free trader, but he also believes that China's behaving badly and needs to change. And then solidly on the free trade side of the equation, you've got Jared Kushner and Stephen Mnuchin, who may be more inclined to push a compromise position. In fact, earlier this year in China talks, Mnuchin went to lengths to keep Navarro out of those meetings. So it'll be an interesting dynamic tomorrow. One of the things that the United States is dangling before China, delaying a planned January 1st rise in tariffs on Chinese goods until April to give more time for negotiation. White House officials say we'll have to see how things go tomorrow before they agree to any kind of a delay. White House officials also tell Fox News that there has been some movement here. They see little baby steps, but there's still a long way to go before the U.S. and China can reach a trade day time. We'll see how it goes tomorrow evening. Laura?
John, first of all, a fabulous outline of all the different forces inside the Trump White House. Lighthizer and Navarro are with Trump's thinking on this. Mnuchin and Jared and the other guys.
Absolutely.
I mean, I like them all, but they're more internationalists, more globalists. But even the China, lovers out there, these people who thought China was going to open up its markets after WTO and all that, so many of them have come along to Trump's view on China, which is amazing. So just public opinion, how it's moved against China's cheating, et cetera. I mean, it's really all Trump. He accomplished just that sea change of thought.
Mm-hmm. And even here at the WTO, the ministerial meetings that were held in Mar del Plata, just a little bit south of Buenos Aires in recent weeks, there really is a push here to reform WTO rules because China is still claiming to be a third world economy with a $12 trillion GDP.
Yeah.
So people are laughing at that and saying China, it's time for China to change.
Break.
They are a big dog on the block, and it's time for them to adhere to the rules.
John, thanks so much. Get some sleep. And get back here. We need you back here. But
no
great
way.
reporting. Great reporting.
Time
and
to
here's
go
my
tango.
Absolutely. Here's my message to President Trump ahead of his meeting with President Xi. Continue to proceed full steam ahead with what's working when it comes to tariffs. Do not settle for an uneven deal. I know he's smart, but he has a lot of people from Wall Street, Goldman, Morgan Stanley, all these people pushing him on this. China has done literally nothing to earn a reprieve from these scheduled tariffs. China said they'll do better. Where's the evidence? Remember what President Reagan said about the Soviets when it came to military issues, of course. A big one was trust but verify. Remember, Mr. President, you won because of Main Street, not really Wall Street. Here with reaction is Stephen Yates, China expert, former Deputy National Security Advisor for Vice President Dick Cheney, and Robert Wolf, former UBS Chairman and Obama Economic Advisor. All right, Robert, you are of the mind that we need a slightly more, softer approach to China when it comes to at least the threats of tariffs. Why is that?
I would say it a little differently. I would say, one, I would argue I'm more forceful. I would have stayed with TPP. That's trading with the 11 nations ex-China. The best way to attack China is actually to trade around them. Secondly, I think it's all about intellectual property and patent protection. I would be much tougher on things like economic espionage and getting the FTC involved. With respect to tariffs, I just don't think that's a good policy because actually the one who loses the most are our consumers because the tariffs get passed on to us as taxes and higher costs of goods. So I don't think that that's a great tool,
Robert,
although it's been working.
That's the line. You've recited pretty much kind of the internationalist line on dealing with China. Here's the problem with that, is that if all of these things were the way to go, then why didn't Clinton do them? Why didn't Obama do them? Why didn't Bush do them? Why year after year after year did we have an expanding trade deficit with China and they became more bold, more aggressive, and frankly more vicious in how they ran their trade regime, how they dealt with U.S. companies. Little company up in, not little, but a company up in Minnesota. I'm just giving you an example, Cambria. They do quartz countertops. They just got a decision, I think it was at the International Trade Court, against what China had been doing. Quartz countertops. They ripped off all their designs, put cheap product into the United States, probably toxic, and we have real jobs on the line in Minnesota. Real jobs. Thankfully, they won, but they had the money to fight. Most companies just give up. They don't have the money to fight this. So if all these things worked, then why didn't all these genius economists in the Obama administration say, oh, let's do this? Well, they tried a lot of it. It didn't work because China is the big dog on the field right now. Other than the United States, that's it.
Okay, well, there's a lot to take under the hood there. Let me first start with, one, TPP was taken back by Trump. It was actually, could have been...
Yeah, because it was a destructive force for America's sovereignty. We're not going to debate TPP here tonight because we don't have time to debate TPP. But it was a loser. Hillary Clinton even said she was against it. All of Middle America was against it. The
Chamber of Commerce was for it.
Oh, Chamber of Commerce. You just made my point for me if the Chamber of Commerce is for TPP.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, Chamber of Commerce is good for what the bottom line is for American business when certain businesses are able to send a lot of work overseas. I get that, but it's not been good long-term for the U.S. economy.
Laura, tariffs have hammered agriculture, which is why we needed a bailout. Yeah. Is that accurate or not accurate?
I think we bail out our own agricultural subsidies too much. I have an interesting point to make on soybeans in a second, so I'm glad you raised that.
Right.
Stephen, let's go to you on this because, look, I think Robert does represent a dominant view on Wall Street. They do a lot of business in Asia. I don't blame them. I don't blame Wall Street for wanting this, wanting a more conciliatory approach to China because Wall Street got really, really rich as Middle America lost millions and millions and millions of jobs. And we bled about, what, $8 trillion from the U.S. economy because of these bad scenarios with China. But I don't really blame Wall Street. I blame the U.S. government.
Well, it is our responsibility to protect our own interests, and it's taken kind of a shock agent like Donald Trump to remind everybody about that being the primary mission of our government. And when we go into these negotiations, it's not to help make life better for the Chinese people. That might be a nice secondary consequence if they're looking to improve their livelihoods. It's to improve the livelihood of American workers, consumers, all those interests. But this has been part and parcel of a long-time theory that's been at the heart of China policy that has believed that if we've brought China into the global systems, that it would normalize their behavior and our differences would narrow, and that we would have greater access to their markets. Even if you just take the tariff questions, they still have wildly high tariffs in key areas, and the WTO has had seemingly no impact on that. And behind the scenes, it's not just Americans who broadly think a change in course was called for. A lot of our allies, even Europeans, are now, and others at the G20 from Latin America, are saying, you know, we want President Trump to hold firm on this because there needs to be a reset in how China thinks it can engage the world. It's gotten away with too much for too long.
All right, Robert, do you think in the end Trump will back off on these tariffs, the increased tariffs that would kick in January 1st?
I think not. I don't think there'll be a real agreement coming out of it. I think that... But a pause? There'll be a pause. I think there'll be a pause probably for 3 months and say we have negotiations. The market will love that. He'll feel really good about the market loving that with what the Fed's kind of said recently going into Christmas time. So I actually think he'll allow the pause, but I think you'll hear the rhetoric starting literally January 2nd. That's funny. On the soybeans question, we're out of time, but U.S. soybean exports to China are down 98%. It's a big hit this year, and the markets wobbled. The damage became clear to that industry. But the political fallout that China anticipated, this is from the New Business Week piece tonight, never materialized. Republicans lost a net total of 1 seat in Kansas, which is soybean country, 1 seat. Yeah, but I just got to play the other side. But on the blue wall, they lost Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. But it wasn't China. The China tariffs are popular there, but they not in the auto sector. It hasn't been. All right, guys, thanks so much. A beloved Christmas song coming up. It's Friday. That means it's time for... Oh, Friday Follies. Anti-Trump sitcom Murphy Brown does it again. A classic Christmas tune is thrown onto the Me Too trash heap, and police are on the lookout for a pantless burglar. Joining us now, Raymond Arroyo, Fox News contributor, New York Times bestselling author of the Will Wilder series. Raymond, what is happening with this, the latest thing with Murphy Brown? It's canceled, I thought. Why?
Well, it's canceled, but we're not quite sure. Diane English, the showrunner, says it might be still in play. Frank Fontana, who is Murphy's sidekick, goes to cover a Trump rally, and, well, he gets a little damaged. Watch. This is from last night.
Let Bibbin Frank know what you think of him. Maybe a good body slam. What do you say?
Oh, I can't watch this garbage anymore.
When Trump left the stage, I decided to leave the press pen and go interview some of the people. Next thing I knew, I'm surrounded by a sea of red hats.
Oh, God.
So here's a beloved character on Murphy Brown. Brutalized. No, apparently not. They're trying to make a point that the crowd at the Trump rally attacked this reporter. Now, just for the record, never happened. Trump rally attacked a reporter. It has never happened, but Diane English said it's so hostile. This environment is horrible. Then they went on. Later, they confront one of these people. Watch.
He had it coming. He's fake news. He's the enemy of the people.
He's a journalist. He was just there to cover the rally. That is what a free press does. It's what separates a democracy from a dictatorship. Although, you know what? Maybe a dictatorship is what you'd prefer.
You know, this is really what so many accuse Trump of. It's mean, it's divisive. We need art that unifies and uplifts. This doesn't do it. This is why Murphy Brown is going off.
But it's boring. It's bad writing. It's terrible acting. And if anyone's getting beaten up, it's people getting beaten up by Antifa.
Laura, I hear a tune. What? Do you hear that?
Yeah.
What you're hearing, or you should be hearing, is a tune that normally plays on the radio. Baby, it's cold outside. Okay? Now, this song has been around since 1944. A Cleveland station, Star 102, has decided this song should be canned this year. And they claim listeners complained and that in the Me Too era, it is no longer appropriate. A little history lesson. It was written in 1944 by Frank Lesser. This is the composer of Guys and Dolls. It was made popular in this film, Neptune's Daughter, in 1949. This is Ricardo Montalban. Watch.
I'll take your hat. Your hair looks swell.
I ought to say no, no, no.
Mind if I move in closer?
At least I'm gonna say that I tried.
What's the sense of hurting my pride?
I really can't
Oh, baby, don't hold out, baby.
but
it's cold outside.
First of all, do women not want, do you prefer a man who says, get out the door?
Well, USA Today said,
get out the door in the cold.
That this speaks volumes about male predatory behavior. Now, Laura, if this is where we are today, there are so many songs. You're the top, remember? Hey, baby, I'm the bottom, you're the top. Can't sing that anymore. Sexual innuendo. Songs like You're the One That I Want from Greece, out, objectifying men. How about Eliza Doolittle in Fair Lady when she sings, tell me no dreams filled with desire. If you're on fire, show me, show me. But obviously, she's a degenerate. I guess we can't sing any of these old tunes anymore.
Remember this song in the 70s, maybe even, Love the One You're With? It's like Love the One. So pretty much every song, rock and roll song, is about what is rock and roll? Do people remember what that stands for?
These classic American songs were about courtship.
Oh my God, this is
flirting,
depressing.
And I don't want to be left to the tender mercies of rap and hip hop at the holidays. I'll stick with Frank Lesser and Baby.
I was cranking it in my office just because I knew we were doing this. I was listening to all the different versions of it.
Well, I'm glad.
What's your favorite Christmas song?
My favorite Christmas song, I think, is White Christmas. I love Silent Night.
Silent Night makes me cry.
There's an Andy Williams song called Some Children See Him that I love, about the different ways people see the Christ child. I love that.
Love it. What a nice way to go into the weekend.
That's right. We're going to get into more of this next week.
Fantastic. And our Fox Nation bit.
Yes, it's clicking away.
Apparently.
Find us on Fox Nation.
Up next, the shocking video of an NFL superstar violently attacking a woman in a hotel lobby. A warning, it is disturbing, but we'll bring it to you next. Plus, the state of New Jersey handcuffing the police in their own state. Now law enforcement agencies are sounding off and stepping up raids in New Jersey tonight. Stay there. It's Friday. That means it's time for... Oh, Friday Follies. Anti-Trump sitcom Murphy Brown does it again. A classic Christmas tune is thrown onto the Me Too trash heap, and police are on the lookout for a pantless burglar. Joining us now, Raymond Arroyo, Fox News contributor, New York Times bestselling author of the Will Wilder series. Raymond, what is happening with this, the latest thing with Murphy Brown? It's canceled, I thought.
Well, it's canceled, but we're not quite sure. Diane English, the showrunner, says it might be still in play. Frank Fontana, who is Murphy's sidekick, goes to cover a Trump rally, and, well, he gets a little damaged. Watch. This is from last night.
Let fibbing Frank know what you think of him. Maybe a good body slam. What do you say?
Oh, I can't watch this garbage anymore.
When Trump left the stage, I decided to leave the press pen and go interview some of the people. Next thing I knew, I'm surrounded by a sea of red hats.
Oh, God.
So here's a beloved character on Murphy Brown. Brutalized. No, apparently not. They're trying to make a point that the crowd at the Trump rally attacked this reporter. Now, just for the record, never
happened.
A Trump rally attacked a reporter. It has never happened, but Diane English said it's so hostile. This environment is horrible. Then they went on. Later, they confront one of these people. Watch.
He had it coming. He's fake news. He's the enemy of the people.
He's a journalist. He was just there to cover the rally. That is what a free press does. It's what separates a democracy from a dictatorship. Although, you know what? Maybe a dictatorship is what you'd prefer.
You know, this is really what so many accuse Trump of. It's mean, it's divisive. We need art that unifies and uplifts. This doesn't do it. This is why Murphy Brown is going off.
But it's boring. It's bad writing. It's terrible acting. And if anyone's getting beaten up, it's people getting beaten up by Antifa.
Laura, I hear a tune.
What?
Do you hear that?
Yeah.
What you're hearing, or you should be hearing, is a tune that normally plays on the radio. Baby, it's cold outside. Okay? Now, this song has been around since 1944. A Cleveland station, Star 102, has decided this song should be canned this year. And they claim listeners complained and that in the Me Too era, it is no longer appropriate. A little history lesson. It was written in 1944 by Frank Lesser. This is the composer of Guys and Dolls. It was made popular in this film, Neptune's Daughter, in 1949. This is Ricardo Montalban. Watch.
I'll take your hat. Your hair looks swell.
I ought to say no, no, no.
Mind if I move in closer?
At least I'm gonna say that I tried.
What's the sense of hurting my pride?
I really can't
Oh, baby,
say.
don't hold out, baby.
Oh, but it's cold outside.
This
First
is
of all,
called flirting.
do women not want, do you prefer a man who says, get out the door?
Well, USA Today said,
Get out the door in the cold.
That this speaks volumes about male predatory behavior. Now, Laura, if this is where we are today, there are so many songs. You're the top, remember? Hey, baby, I'm the bottom, you're the top. Can't sing that anymore. Sexual innuendo. Songs like You're the One That I Want from Greece, out, objectifying men. How about Eliza Doolittle in Fair Lady when she sings, Tell me no dreams filled with desire. If you're on fire, show me, show me. But obviously, she's a degenerate. I guess we can't sing any of these old tunes anymore.
Remember this song in the 70s, maybe even, Love the One You're With? It's like Love the One. So pretty much every song, rock and roll song, is about what is rock and roll. People remember what that stands for.
These classic American songs were about courtship,
oh my God,
romance,
this is
flirting,
depressing.
And I don't want to be left to the tender mercies of rap and hip-hop at the holidays. I'll stick with Frank Lesser and Baby.
I was cranking it in my office just because I knew we were doing this. I was listening to all the different versions of it.
Well, I'm glad.
What's your favorite Christmas song?
My favorite Christmas song, I think, is White Christmas. I love Silent Night.
Silent Night makes me cry.
There's
every
an Andy
time.
Williams song called